Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my Mr. Robot Season 4 Episode 10 recap and review. The episode was titled Gone, and it was written and directed by series creator Sam Esmail. This video will contain spoilers if you haven't watched Episode 10 yet, so go do that first and come back and watch this video after you finish. This was a weird episode for me. I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. A lot of important stuff happened and we got some good character moments, but it just didn't have the impact of like if you explained to me what was going to happen or what happened and I thought about it as compared to watching it, if that makes sense. It's fine. I say that as a really big fan of the series and generally a big fan of the character episodes. This one just for me personally wasn't my favorite. I'm guessing that feelings were probably mixed on it. Some people probably really loved it. Other people might not have wanted to sit through it at this point in the story, but let's go through the whole thing, talk about what happened, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what I thought at the end. Things start out at the hospital. Dom is alive. She's been through surgery. She's recovering in the hospital, talking to someone from the FBI. On the news, she learns about the Deus Group hack. We get a report about the documents that were leaked. They haven't all been verified, but they are causing problems for the people who are mentioned in them. And we see right away that Whiterose has been identified. We see Minister Zhang's face on the screen, and it says that the Chinese minister is in fact the hacker known as Whiterose. Dom puts two and two together, realizes she had a chance to stop Whiterose back in China, didn't figure out what was going on in that situation. And we learn that she has been put on administrative leave. The FBI has her family in a safe house, but she can't visit. She's essentially stuck there. And as far as we can tell, she is a sitting duck in the hospital. She killed Janice, who was her Dark Army handler. So we have to imagine that the Dark Army would want to visit and have some words with her about that situation. She also loses her value to them if she's on administrative leave, as she can't really do anything in the FBI either, except for be investigated by them, which none of that is very good. Either way, we don't find out what happens with that because she decides she doesn't want to be in the hospital and she has them discharge her against medical advice. This set up one of my favorite shots from the episode where we see her sitting outside, and after the orderly left her there, not letting her get out of the wheelchair, it keeps setting off the automatic door which sort of opens and closes behind her. She makes it back to her apartment and decides to put together a grilled cheese sandwich. She uses mayo instead of butter on the bread, and that kind of made me laugh because I remember different people doing that when I was a kid. Darlene shows up as she's eating her sandwich and wants her to get out of there. Dom isn't with the idea of leaving, and it seems like her motivation is that she wants to see her family and she wants to apologize for what she's put them through. We can see her wanting to do that based on what we've seen from her and her family throughout this season, but Darlene makes a pretty good point too, that what it really looks like is she's just sitting there waiting to die and that she needs to go. Not able to convince her, Darlene eventually smashes her Alexa on the ground. Dom eventually agrees. It sets things up for the road trip and they head out together where they run into Elliot at a motel. This is the only little bit of Elliot that we get in the episode. We see him sitting at a laptop with the thumb drive from Phillip Price. He's looking at documents on that. Outside the motel, we see him holding a little device in his hand. I believe this is something like the rubber ducky, but I'm not sure exactly what this thing is. It seems to be key in his plans for what he's going to do when he goes to Washington Township plant. That part seems clear. Darlene tries to get him to leave. He says he's not done. He says he's going to have to go to Washington Township and that Darlene can't come. And she says that she doesn't want to, like she's basically done. It's a sad moment and it kind of felt like, damn, Darlene's gonna die, which is something I didn't want to have happen, but we'll get to all of that later. As they're talking, Dom makes her way into the room only to find Leon sitting on the bed, which is frightening for her because the last time that she saw him was at the barn at the end of season 3. Leon doesn't remember though. He's rolling a joint watching TV and he says, "Have we met before?" She reminds him of the barn and it all starts to make sense to him. And we go back to that idea that now Leon has moved on from the Dark Army and he's just a hired gun. After Darlene returns, the three of them go on the road. They're on the way to Boston. They're taking the scenic route. And Leon says that they're trying to avoid all of the Dark Army and their RWAs, which are rich white assholes. He says that they are the Dark Army's favorite clients, the RWAs. They stop at a rest stop so he can go to the bathroom, which he says he needs to steal a mirror, which is a Kurt Vonnegut reference that no one knows, which leads him to share his distaste for the fact that nobody reads anymore. Earlier, Darlene had mentioned that everything was ready to Elliot about redistributing the money that they stole from the Deus Group. She thought he should do the honors. He said no, this was hers. So she ends up doing that at the rest stop with Dom. It's a pretty good moment and probably my favorite part of this episode, I guess. We see Dom being Dom, wondering about the specifics and if laws were broken, if crimes were committed. We see Darlene tell her to relax. She gives her a kiss. And we watch the faces of everyone as they start to get their alerts that their eCoin transfers went through that they weren't expecting. Dom looks down and she said, did everyone get this much? So we don't know exactly how much, but Darlene says it's the biggest redistribution of wealth in the history of mankind. Explains how these people wrote the laws to benefit themselves, so it didn't matter that they were breaking the laws, and that her and Elliot basically Robin Hooded all of them. And it's pretty cool. It's enjoyable. I don't know how realistic it is, but I think it's fine as far as I'm concerned. It's a TV show. I'm fine with believing that this benefited everyone a little bit, at least in their normal lives, and struck a blow to the people who were at the top there. And what I think stands out the most about this is that Dom moves past her cynicism, her suspicion, and they kind of just have that moment there together. It's nice that they get that moment considering they were just prisoners of the Dark Army not all that long ago and everything else that's happened to them throughout the story. After that, they go to the airport and we get a cameo from Irving. I wouldn't say it's a return. He just sort of pops up at the airport. On the first watch, this really threw me off because I couldn't decide if there was something more going on with this or not. Was it a setup? Was something going to happen? It felt awkward. Seeing her return to Irving is definitely something that I wanted to see. It just felt a little bit forced. I mean, it was cool to see his book. It was cool to see that he's still out there in the world. The interaction was funny, just like everything he's in. But in the background, it just sort of felt like, why would she believe anything that he says? And yeah, she was scared, but when she leaves, it's just sort of like she leaves the whole thing behind. I don't know. It was weird to me. I don't know what other people thought about it. Good to see Irving back, but not my favorite Irving scene. Dom and Darlene talk about it. They seem to accept that the Dark Army's not interested in them anymore. And Dom hints that she doesn't really want to go to Budapest. She wants to get back to see her family. Darlene's pushing for her to still come, even though it wasn't her idea. It was Cisco's idea to go to Budapest. The Dark Army's not after them, so they're not running away, but still she wants her to come. And we know Darlene has feelings for Dom, but it kind of comes out in this that that's not the motivating factor anyways. What's really going on is Darlene can't really stand to be by herself. She says this in a couple different ways as they're talking, and you get the idea that she's just frightened of being alone. Dom, on the other hand, is like the opposite. She doesn't want to leave because she has all this stuff in place, even though that life that she's been leading has kept her like where she can't sleep for years, according to what she says. So she doesn't want to try something new. She doesn't want to let go, and it all comes down to this rom-com kind of situation. Was definitely not a term I was expecting to use in relation to Mr. Robot and an episode recap. They eventually start to say goodbye. Dom gives her a number, someone working in cybersecurity, says they need you. Darlene says they can't handle me. They go back and forth. It's pretty sad and it feels like a goodbye. The goodbye with Elliot and the fact that Irving's there and the fact that there's been theories that Darlene's going to die in a plane crash the whole time, or in the back of my mind anyways. And it started to feel like maybe that was going to happen. Darlene was going to leave and then something terrible was going to happen, and then Dom was going to be left to have to deal with that. Although at the same time, and this is probably where the episode was really not working for me, we had Mr. Robot tell Magda and young Elliot in the boardroom that Darlene might be the key. So we just had that introduced recently. Dom is not the important one here. Darlene is definitely the key character if you had to pick one of the two. So Dom being left behind to deal with the tragedy of Darlene being killed on a flight that they were on together, that doesn't really work. Like, where do they fit that into the last 3 hours? So as I was watching it, it, I was just sort of like, well, this doesn't really feel right. It doesn't feel right. And then it turned into this thing where Dom starts to leave. Darlene starts to freak out. She starts to have a panic attack. They got this pop song in the background. Dom gets to the exit, can't go through it. Darlene gets to the ticket gate, can't scan her ticket, goes into the bathroom and goes into full-blown panic attack. Dom boards the plane, just missing Darlene as she ran into the bathroom. Darlene works her way through the panic attack, and this is a pretty good moment here where the woman's asking her behind her if she needs help, and she says, no, I can take care of myself. And that really is the big moment where she comes to that understanding. And I also really like the fact that when Dom lets go, she decides not to get up. She just sits back. She's able to sleep on the plane. Everyone was telling her that she needed to get some sleep, and she finally does. In the end, it all works out. I feel like this could be the last time we see Dom. I feel like it will work as an ending for her character as far as what's going on in the rest of the story. Darlene, I think, has a part to play, so I definitely don't think that's the last we're going to see of her, but it could be. And with 3 episodes left, that's where we're at. We did find out that the finale will be a 2-parter. It's going to air on the same night, so we have 2 more installments of Mr. Robot to come. It feels like the Dark Army has been somewhat neutralized, at least from the news reports. We know we left Whiterose at her apartment with the FBI knocking on the door. We heard the gunshots. There's going to be the aftermath of that. But more importantly, Elliot's on his way to Washington Township, and we have to imagine that those two are going to have their face-off, which we know has been coming at that point. It could work out that Elliot will go to Washington Township and do something, and then they'll get together after. It's hard to say at this point. As far as the documents and the screens that we saw with Elliot looking at the stuff from Whiterose, all it really shows as far as I can tell is that Whiterose does have a particle accelerator like the LHC. We pretty much saw that in season 3. I don't know that anything on these screens give away anything as far as what Whiterose is planning to do with that. It just seems to indicate that moving the project to the Congo will improve the capacity. They'll be able to get better results from the experiments that they're doing. I like the Leon parts. I thought Leon did a pretty good job here of being the third wheel with Dom and Darlene. The Vonnegut references were fun for me. I was a big Vonnegut fan growing up, and it's been a long time since I read any of his books, but it's funny to think about Kilgore Trout and some of the crazy ideas that are related to him. The thing about mirrors is referring to something that he called mirrors leaks and liked to pretend that they were holes between multiple universes, if I recall correctly. So when Leon's saying he's going to steal a mirror, he's going to take a leak. And I'm not reading too much into the parallel universes thing personally, but I'm guessing that a lot of people will draw that connection to Whiterose and her project. So it wasn't a personal favorite of mine this episode, but I think it was a pretty good ending to the whole idea of Darlene and Dom. I have a feeling that some people probably really liked it, and that is okay too. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Did you think this was a good character episode? Are you happy that Darlene and Dom both got over their internal blocks and were able to move on by the end of the episode? What do you think about Irving showing back up? Do you think we can take what he said at face value? He's really on a book tour and the Dark Army really doesn't care about Darlene and Dom anymore? What's Elliot planning? What did he have in that little device that he was carrying? What do you think his plan is for Washington Township? And how is Whiterose going to bounce back from the situation that she's in? And what is she going to show Elliot to try to show him that they're on the same side? Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. I will talk to you soon.